directly. We don't have the letter like you were talking about, but that's where we got kind of the feedback on I think both options.
And then at the August meeting, where council reviewed Mayor McKee's proposal, we had either 4 of 4 or 5 of 5 say this is a good concept. I personally felt option 1 was cleaner, but I could live with either. So the council appeared to take the stance from what the city attorney said on the 24th. There weren't residual concerns about legality of the approach. You can take that, you're a law professor, so you know more about this than I ever will. But that's the conversation that's happened to this point.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Varenkamp.
with the things that have been talked about, the last thing I want to do is spend more money on legal fees, those kind of things, when our staff has a good feeling about it, and then council mayor have good feelings about it, and everything's recorded, those kind of things. While I would love to have something in writing, I've got some things to go watch when I leave, but we depend on our staff and everyone that's worked on this, including the attorney and such, that we've got 2 options in front of us. Again, I still think about that third option of leaving alone and just resisting the CUPs and PUDs coming in front of us and follow our ordinances, and that'll define it. I still think about that, but the time that's been spent on this and coming in with option 1 or 2 as a recommendation from the council mayor, I think it's something that we can talk about tonight of doing it, but I think it would be one of those things we would really like to see the detail and sizes and all of that stuff one more time in front of the planning commission before we would make a recommendation if we choose option 2. Again, we've got a couple of folks that are going to hang out, one for sure, and I don't know if Mark has changed his mind, but that's my thoughts on this. I'd rather not spend more money, more of our money, ours, not citizens' money, not city's money, our money, everybody, to get more I's dotted and T's crossed, unless it's some kind of recommendation that could be put together, formalized, and then come back to us for, yeah, that works. I mean, I listen to you and talk about 500-foot setbacks, and then Commissioner Wu is the gears are turning over there, and she's drawing like crazy and stuff. I love her resources, and I'd like to see a little bit more formal stuff to present to council before we just kind of give it up and say yay or nay on something. Thank you.
Okay. Kendra, so a lot of these standards came from surveying other communities, and I appreciate the breadth of, size. Would it be too difficult to maybe just summarize in a table some of those, just to get a feel for, because again, when I calculated the Eagle Brook at 550 feet, and yet in the ordinance, it's suggesting a max of 750 feet. I'm looking at my lot and I'm going, man, my back southern property line is 600 feet. And I'm trying to imagine, what kind of issues are, but I'd really like to maybe understand a little bit more about how other communities put these things into action. And if there are maybe just some examples, I'd love to drive by and just see what does a 500-foot setback look like for a big church?
Yeah. So a couple things in there just to unpack, just for the record. Our proposal does not have a 750-foot setback. We do believe that would be a taking, and we are not recommending that. So a taking under the law.
Mr. Chair.
think would be challenging, and that was in the.
That was in my draft as essentially a placeholder number to work off of the philosophy.
Okay, because it does say
Yep.
capped at 750
Yep.
feet, so
That was just-
I was like, oh, man,
So we
I
don't-
know, I was
I
up
could not
late,
get
you
there.
know,
I
or
did a bunch of
something.
calculations and I could not get there.
So we started there, and we had conversations with the attorney and looked at other things, and so we pulled it back to a 200-foot setback.
Right, which is what I did it on.
And I think Natalie used a standard number rather than the scaling, feeling like it was just a clearer standard that people could easily understand, as opposed to tying it to building size or building height. That's certainly something we could look at scaling. What I would say is, we cannot find a city that has anything close to this for a setback for these types of uses. So that is unusual. But we could do a table that took these cities and said, what are the setbacks for these? And what are any additional performance standards? And we could put that in a table. I had a small version of that in the October one, and we could add the things that Natalie found. But the short answer is, this is more restrictive than most we've seen. The 50% impervious did come from a city. I forget which city she pulled that from, but we did pull
Medina,
that. Is
I
that
believe.
from Medina?
I believe so.
Okay. I was thinking Duluth, but it could have been Medina. And then the parking lot landscaping example pulled from Plymouth, so if you've worked in Plymouth, that's where that language came from.
Yeah, I haven't
Back.
looked.
The access options came from a couple different cities. I think both Duluth and Minnetonka in particular have those. So she pulled from different cities, but we could do a table for the commission if you wanted to table and ask for that info, just so you had a sense of where that came from. It did get a little confusing. We probably should put some tables in this for the council, or headers in it, so it's clear that this is option 2 from the mayor and option 1 example, and some page numbers. But page 5 is what staff is recommending as a starting point. Yes, we could provide more information if you felt like that would be helpful to the discussion. We could table and direct us to provide that table.
Well, real quickly then, while it's on my head, or on my brain, I saw that when it came to the height, 35 feet, but I think I read that the steeples were exempt from the height requirement.
Correct.
What about gymnasiums? Would they be?
No,
Okay. Now, there was also in there, under the discussion points on page 12, that the setbacks would be tiered relative to building size. And Kendra, I always want to make sure I understand what we're talking about when we talk about building size. So are we talking about gross building area, or are we talking about footprint?
So that was, again, from the mayor's discussion, I believe, and not for Natalie's recommendation. I think that the tiering on that page was about the number of spaces. Is that what you're looking at, 5?
No, number 1,
Oh,
building height.
primary structure setback under number 1 on page
that
12.
sounds like footprint.
For number, I guess I got confused by the last.
Number 1A.
One.
Number 1A.
Yeah, so I used it based off of square footage, usable square footage of the building. So, with the 35-foot height that you talked about previously is what the code currently allows, so that's not actually a change there. So with that, you're talking about, depending on the type of use, if it's a gymnasium or an auditorium or something, that's just going to be the 1 story. So going off of the square footage of that and then the rest of the building.
Okay, but here's the difference. Here's what I'm trying to get at. If a church comes in and says, we'll build a 10,000 square foot church, okay? But it's going to be 2 stories. Or some other assembly use. But they got 20,000 square feet. Well, that has everything to do with the calculation of setback, parking lots, and everything else. They got a footprint of 10,000 square feet, but it's got usable gross building area, which is a definition.
Yep.
of 20,000 square feet. So what are we, what would our tiering be based upon?
Well, it's a.
Footprint or square footage?
I would say
building area.
the latter, the square footage, the total square footage, is what I was thinking initially, but that'd be a good discussion point for the planning commission, I think.
I mean, obviously, a building is gonna have to be limited because of the 35 feet. Nobody would be able to get more than 2 stories
Right.
under 35 feet.
Yep.
But I could see where it would make a difference in what somebody built and how it was measured. A church obviously would have, one level, for the main area of the church, but then they have offices and schools that might be 2-story. So
Right.
how are you gonna determine what the gross building area or the building size is, then it would determine everything else relative to its setbacks? That's what I just want to make sure that,
Yeah, and we aren't, staff is not proposing that tiering of the setbacks. If you did that, cities often increase setbacks as building height goes up. That's a very common tool that cities use. We just, again, wanted to make it easy for folks to understand, I think, which is why she went with the standard setback. But you could do either option if that's something you wanted to do, meaning you could tier the setback based on the size of the building, or you could tier the setback based on the height of the building.
okay, so the proposed, okay, I'm sorry, this one got by me, red ink. So we're not proposing a tiered setback,
Staff is not.
okay?
The council would, at least a couple would prefer that, however. So that's certainly a item for discussion.
Well, my personal opinion is I would fully support a tiered setback. I think that's, again, I think a lot of these arguments about this type of use relative to its proximity to, an existing residential area could help eliminate that discussion. The bigger the building, the farther back it is, and maybe we don't have an issue. That's just my feeling, but I think a setback should be tiered if this gets passed,
Mr.
Yeah,
Just a point of clarification that, so with that, we do feel that 200 is the max of that tier. So if it were to be tiered, it would start at a number smaller than 200 and tier up to 200.
why a max of 200?
And that's a discussion that you had more than I did.
Right. Well, it's a discussion that the city attorney and Natalie had. But that is, beyond that, it becomes a taking. So a taking is when the government restricts the use of your land in such a way. I'm oversimplifying it, I know. But when the setback gets too restrictive, too big, that's a taking of the land without compensation, and we cannot do that. And so we listened to a webinar where the speaker said anything more than 100 feet is a taking. We think we can, in talking with the city attorney, we could go up to 200 feet for a setback, but beyond that would be a legal challenge that he could not, I don't think, support.
Okay. Now, Kendra, I think we could all agree that most of all of our recent developments are, when it comes to setbacks, well, we'll give you, instead of 100 feet, we'll give you 60 feet, but then you have to give more screening, more trees.
That's allowed by right, yes.
Okay. In this kind of a situation, though, with only 200 feet, if that's going to be our maximum, could the ordinance be written that there is no relief for 200 feet?
Whoops.
Well, right now, the ordinance only gives relief from that 100-foot setback, front yard setback along arterial roads by reducing it to 60 feet for buildings with that planting, or the front yard setback for parking with the planting. So we do get people asking for that flexibility. It wouldn't apply in the areas where these types of uses would abut against residential. That's not an option today, and it wouldn't be an option if this were adopted, to reduce the
Okay.
setback.
So, but even along arterial roads, then, could it be restricted? Again, if we're all going to try to go down keeping a rural feel. I really,
You could-
it's hard to imagine anything simpler than going, you know what, we're not gonna allow you to build 60 feet off the road. You're gonna have to keep 100 feet.
You could change the ordinance. You couldn't change the ordinance just for churches.
Okay.
But you could eliminate that part of the landscape ordinance across the board for Napa, for Ravinia, for Tavera.
Okay. That's maybe a different discussion for a different day. I mean,
But you could, I mean,
Yeah.
you
Can I
could.
ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So how would that apply to a 200-foot setback then?
It doesn't, that's what I'm saying, that
This would supersede that?
right.
Okay. This would take that away as a tool, essentially.
Gee, one of my suggestions was actually inserting that as a tool. Because it incentivizes developers and institutions to increase the amount of greenscape in there, which is also, provided it's done carefully, can help promote a rural feel. I don't want to see 200 feet of lawn. I'm sorry, I just don't. It's not healthy. I think that if we can, reward developers and reward them.
Break up the noise, have
Credit for-
screening, all
yeah,
those things.
Some kind of credit for the preservation of existing quality trees. Some kind of, where we talk about the total impervious surface coverage not exceeding 50%. What about if they were to try pervious surface designs? And rainwater, stormwater control on site, which I know the SWIP makes them do. Or what if they were to do more sustainable, incentivize them in a more sustainable ways such that they can increase some of these things? So increase of pervious surfaces. Where they leave landscape in a natural state, they have to prove that it can be engineered to be sustainable. So that it isn't just, we're going to leave a bunch of box elder trees and so forth. They have to prove that it can be sustainable, but it rewards them. So I was thinking actually the opposite to what you were
Okay.
just mentioning.
And-
And that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all over the place with this one.
It's a different.
Yeah,
take than
we're all
what
over
I
the
have.
place, which I think
Yeah.
is just fine,
Well, okay, so let's look at this thing from the perspective of the four options that we had. I mean, I would
Sorry
certainly
about
love
that.
to see, more of examples and the data that was derived to come up with some of these. I'd really like to maybe just give it more thought. If there were, we've had in past situations, I believe Beth Hustad gave us, a list of properties that we could go look at, for the residents, the senior housing.
Yeah.
If there's a couple of examples that we can look at, or we just go take it upon ourselves to go look at it, to see, how we feel about some of these issues, and maybe even talk to a few people, I don't know. We have, I think we do have a need to maybe see a little bit more of I trust what was said here by the staff about the attorneys thing, and I don't need to require a full legal dissertation on it, but if we are all right now at the point that we would like to table this, what kind of consensus do we have for doing that, for further thought?
Mr. Chair, just before we get to that point, for those listening or that will listen, I assume there'd be a significant amount of interest since everything is online. Setbacks that we're talking about are for building only, correct? That includes parking lots and everything else. I wanted to get that on the record for everybody so they know and understand that the setbacks include the parking lots and those kind of things. So again, it was very well thought out, and I want to thank the mayor and Jeremy and the Councilmember Nichols for doing what you've done and starting this and getting it going. But I wanted to add those things too, so people knew and understand. I love what Commissioner Wu said about still the give and take on the setbacks related to screening, berms, And obviously trees, shrubs, and all of those things. That's the last thing I want to see is a massive yard and stuff. While they're pretty, but I'd rather see things to break up noise and traffic noise and those kind of things. But in that instance, if you're asking for, I think it would be wise. This is something way bigger than just a quick meeting and talk about and go. If we table this to get more information, does that, we've closed the public hearing on this subject, does that limit public input in a formal setting like this going forward? And it's all about the planning commission talking about it before it's recommended to the council? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yes.
there's more public hearings, those kind of things done? I'm asking though.
Well,
those
if we
questions
table it,
first
would that
point order.
require another public hearing at the,
No, I mean, this is the public hearing that was held. I will say that typically every meeting has a public comment opportunity for people to comment on anything.
Okay.
So I think it's really up to the commission, if you're comfortable keeping that moving forward. It would
But
have
we-
an updated packet where people could comment again.
As tonight, though, that's open to anything other than what's in the notes. Kind of like tonight, it was time for public comment on anything, with the exception you had to wait for the public hearing to talk about the specific topic. Is that kind of the same thing, or public comment?
It would just depend whether there's any
Okay.
formal public hearings on the next agenda. I don't think there's any planned public hearings on the next agenda. So in that case, it would be just the typical public comment opportunity. The difficult part is really, bless you, for items that require public hearing, we kind of have to, we do have to follow the statutory guidelines, which makes it a little wonky for people who don't understand the rules we have to work within. If there's no formal public hearings, it would be just a regular public comment opportunity.
Okay. It would be open if somebody,
If the commission would like to continue that past practice. And as always, people can email, can write letters, and we always include
Right.
anything we get in the packet. You don't have to come here till 9:22 PM on a Thursday evening to get your point heard. You can email the council or myself or anything, and we put it in the packet as part of the public record.
you know, the other use that has not garnered a lot of discussion here, and some of the particulars, is schools. You know, for instance, setbacks, and now it says, of all structures, what would a ball field with a grandstand, would that be a,
A grandstand's a structure, a ball field's not.
okay.
But a
But
fence,
but a parking
backside.
lot for, okay, so, and would it matter if it was public or private?
No.
Okay. I mean, because a public school would be tax exempt, but I'm not aware of any rules that they get to bypass certain requirements because they're a public. We don't have any schools here, so I don't really know, you know, if there's anything would be particular to them that would exclude them from any of these.
There is St. John's. That's a private school in Corcoran.
But they've been there forever. I mean, I have no idea what conditions that was built under that, you know, would,
But it would apply to them. They couldn't, you know, if we took it out of that district, if it wasn't a residential district, I think it's actually in a public institutional district, but if it was in residential, you know, they wouldn't be able to expand, and they'd be subject to this ordinance.
okay.
But that's the same of all of our existing churches. Once they were approved in residential districts, but in the 2030, I think, round of comp plan updates, they were rezoned to public institutional. It might have been the 2020 round, I don't know, but I think we rezoned to public institutional for all of those, I believe.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions, discussion, before we decide what it is we want to do?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table this issue for a future meeting.
Okay, there is a There is a motion to table it. Do I have a second?
I'd second it. Yes.
Okay, any other discussion?
I would like to give guidance to city staff on what us as a planning commission is looking for on the tabling. Obviously, we've got some requests. I know we've all made comments and they've been writing feverishly and stuff, but to table it with obvious direction to the council or to the city staff on what kind of things we want to see, what we want to look for, unless we've spoken enough and they've got good notes and they know what we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we all have various opinions. I personally will take it upon myself to, try to better educate myself relative to this. And I would suggest any other commission members to reach out and to seek whatever resources they might have available for you before the next meeting. Because again, I think there's a wide enough discrepancy here that, hard to consume all of this into one precise, here is the planning commission's recommendation to the city council. It might come in a wide variety, but that's the way I'm going to handle it. Yes,
I just have one clarification. I think we're pretty clear with everything other than where you're standing, looking at you, Mr. Commissioner Lanterman, with the city attorney. Would you like him present at the next time we discuss this to directly ask questions? Would you like a written letter in the packet based upon what's in the packet? What's the comfort level of the commission on that?
I think it'd be great if you could be present. I know when I've gone to Minneapolis City Council and Planning Commission, I think even at the COW, Committee of the Whole, they have the attorney there. So for me, it would be great to just be able to have them interject. I don't know, that it would be a great resource, but.
I agree. I think that would be money well spent. As my colleague referenced, I'm sensitive to spending money with the city attorney. But, if we spend money with the city attorney to determine if someone's roof is too high or not, we should certainly include the city attorney in this discussion, which I think is very important. And as the chair said, we should get it right. And I'm not sure right now if, speaking for myself, if I can get it right. I have additional questions.
So we will work with the attorney for what meeting makes the most sense that he can attend. The only thing I would say or add onto that is, if you're looking for a really specific black and white response, the best thing would be to email questions in advance, because it's hard for
That's
attorneys on the fly to really give you a black and white response to something.
And you know what? I think
That's fair.
it behooves us to prepare in that manner so that we have an efficient meeting, because the reason why we're employing our time, and obviously this person's time and everyone else's, is that we're trying to arrive at something that's got legs, that will work. So I think if we can get our questions together, it doesn't mean we can't ask questions, it just means we can think about it and compose something so we come to the meeting prepared. Because I was just really floored by this, there was so much in there.
Yeah, I agree. I would much rather have a well-researched, sound response than just expecting the city attorney to just kind of shoot from the hip. So, yeah, I think it's fair to expect questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's going to save money up front.
Yeah.
Them being here and answer questions instead of us throwing it back and forth, and every conversation that's had, it'd be nice to put.
Well, not only will it save money that way, it'll save money 3 years from
Down the
now
road.
when it's litigated by
Correct.
someone whose application doesn't get approved.
I think it's money well spent then.
So we should get it right.
And again, I don't want to take away from all of the time that's been put into this from city staff and the attorney the way it is right now, but it's a big breath of ordinance change, and
well, and, yeah, and I mean, there's an outline.
Big one.
And so my further review will be based upon judgment of the outline as presented.
Yeah.
I don't want to recreate any wheel. But I certainly want to, consider what's been put out there and suggest or discuss with you folks any changes that we might recommend to the city council, so.
I also like the idea of tabulating the different resources that were tapped so that it gives it a sense of what's reasonable. What are other cities asking for? And if I know that Medina has a certain setback, I can go drive around Medina and look and see if it's being exercised. There's a good chance it isn't yet, because Medina's not very urban, but I think seeing that is a real help too. And hopefully that's not running Natalie around, but I think it's just putting where she pulled from.
Yeah, and I think in the interim, you should, given the questions you've had, you should look at the October 22nd, 2020
Yeah.
Staff report that I wrote for the council and the presentation, because it's got some images of churches, it's got a table of different cities, and she can build on that. But in the interim, while it's fresh, if you're interested in looking at it, it's on the website. It's still, I believe, from last year, so that could be helpful.
And I would also recommend the video from the June 24th council meeting as well, with the city attorney present.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just make one final comment. This is a big topic, and, I do want to say that I appreciate how thoroughly researched it was by staff, Natalie, Kendra, and Brad. This was a lot to get, I'm certain, this was a lot to get their arms around, and I think that they did a nice job, given the fact how difficult of a topic this was, and I for one, I appreciate it. I may not agree with everything, but I appreciate the work that went into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, any other further discussion? All right, so we have a motion to table. Do we need to set a date, Brad?
We talked about that. I think ideally, it's probably best practice, maybe October.
Yeah, what would that be, the October?
I mean, we're asking for some consideration of your time and
Well, and it'd be
Kendra's
great
time, so I want to be
Sorry, no.
I want to be cognizant of that, so. I mean,
Seventh.
we're not under any time constraints here. Are we? I mean,
It's a 2021 objective that the council set back in January.
All
So
right.
we'd like to get it done this year, if we can.
okay.
I guess the question would be, Commissioners Lantern and Camp, are you okay adding the October meeting to the motion as far as the table too?
Yes,
October
October 7th?
7th.
Yes, I am.
I'll second that. Is there a way to get contents to the planning commission before a week? If you know what I'm saying, if there's a couple of weeks for us, for council, planning commission to travel, destinate, as you've witnessed from all of us, we don't just read these things, we make a lot of trips, checking around, looking around, trying to see things and coming up what's best for our cities, so.
We'll do our best. There is a bonus week in there, so I think it's an extra week between the last council meeting of the month and the planning commission meeting. Typically is the one after another, and I think there's another week in there, so we'll try.
That'd be great.
All right, so the motion has been amended to table to October 7th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of tabling the zoning amendment for assembly uses to October 7th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we will table that to October 7th, and again, thank you, everybody, and to our city council members who have started this off and all the time that you've put into it, so.
And
I hope that I can do the same.
And Brad, when do you think we should have our questions in to the attorney by? I know sooner rather than later, but sometimes I'm going to need to do a bit of homework first.
That's a good question. So the packet will need to be completed by staff, really probably the 22nd-ish, 23rd at the latest of September.
Oh, boy, that's
So I would
coming up.
say September 15th would probably be questions for the city attorney, so he has a
Couple of
week
weeks.
to turn around, if you want them in the packet. Otherwise, if you want them, emailed out before the meeting, not included in the packet, that's always acceptable too.
Could I get that date again?
September 15th would be ideal,
So that's the deadline for city attorney.
ideally. If nothing else, we can email after the packet goes out too. The day before is better than at the meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I want to recognize the immense breadth of public comments and such this evening. I know we'll get more, but thank you, Mr. Coots. And then I forgot the name of the person that participated online. Thank you guys so much. Again, I was fully expecting a significant group of people here, and
You're significant,
we
right?
all are. We're the public, but thank you for your time very, very much.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
love to see you more involved.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go on to item 7A, planning project update. Is there any questions or comments regarding the update? Item number 2, has that been resolved?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was.
That was at the August 26th meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Typically, this is updated once a month before the second meeting of the month for planning commission. We don't update it again for each commission, so it's a little bit delayed.
Okay, that's fine.
So it takes some reference to the next report, which is the city council report. So for example, garages 2,
Yeah.
that was removed from the agenda and pushed to the September 23rd meeting due to additional information coming in from the applicant, so, which is in the council report, not updated on here, so.
Right.
But additional information, they're making changes, right? Aren't they making some changes to their their site plan relative to security? What else? I know the other issues that came up was
Agreements,
garbage.
Lighting, those types of things.
Were they gonna put in a
Thank you.
trash receptacle and stuff? I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't know what they're
Yeah,
gonna
they have
come to.
until September 7th to provide us updated information, and we'll know from there.
Okay, but that's not coming back to this commission.
Correct.
Okay. Just, it seems kind of weird to me that, we've gone, well, we denied, or we made a recommendation to deny the applicant, the application to the city council on a 3-2 vote. Now, the applicant is going to go around, he's going to make some changes, but this commission will not have another chance to weigh in on those. Just inherently in some,
It won't go to the planning commission, but I think the council would love to hear your opinions via email or phone calls once it goes to the city council.
But if it's substantially different, though, if he were to change his application to the point where it was not the same,
Yeah, I don't think adding a
that's not going
security
to be.
gate or changing
No,
hours of
that's not
operation.
substantially different.
If
but-
you were to come with,
A different building footprint and a bunch of different stuff.
Right, that is, my understanding is that is not at all what he's
No.
doing.
He's just tweaking some stuff.
Right.
That's pretty much it,
Right.
we
If I-
think.
If I could ask a question?
yes, sir.
I believe I recall from listening to that meeting that the primary reason for denial was that the development was happening too soon in the phasing for the MUSA rollout.
Was the biggest for me.
It seems like no
Premature.
matter what the change would be, the recommendation wouldn't be affected.
And I wasn't, maybe I was,
We were the.
it just seems that the process, when a denial or a recommendation to deny was made, but then, but then the applicant comes back with something different. We seen that right down here with Beth Hustad, you know. This commission 3 times recommended denial, and yet, without hardly any changes whatsoever, it went to the city council, you know, and it was approved. Now, that is certainly the prerogative of the city council. We all know that. And I have no problem with that. But when something materially changes, like, and again, I don't know that this would be material, but it just seems somewhat odd to me that, you know, when something is changed and then it goes back, it just voids us. And I don't know how you fix it. I'm just calling it out as
Well, I think
it
it's
is.
the degree of change.
Yeah, certainly.
And I disagree about changes for Beth Hustad. She pulled a whole building out of the pro forma.
That was after the first one.
I know, but she still did it.
Well,
That's massive. I mean,
well, I know.
but I still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she did some miraculous things. And
The other thing
Trying to
I'll
make it
say
work.
to that too is when an applicant hears what you say and makes changes to do what you wanted them to do, I think that's appropriate.
Correct,
And I can't argue
Yeah.
with that either.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
But I did think, I thought I saw somewhere that if an application gets denied, you're supposed to wait 6 months before trying again. And I am curious as to why that wasn't the case here.
Because
They haven't,
delivered it.
they haven't voted. I think that only applies to the city council
Right.
denying an
And
application.
they,
Honestly,
not-
the
They
city
voted on
council.
it.
Not to our
did-
recommendation.
Okay.
The council did deny it the first time it came before council for Cook Lake.
Yeah.
And they asked, the developer asked for us to grant an exemption to the normal ordinance requirement for a 6-month delay, which the council decided to give.
Yep.
So normally, yes, if the council had denied it, they would have to wait 6 months to submit substantially the same proposal. But in that case, it was waived.
Okay, any other comments or questions on 7A? Okay, let's move on to 7B then, reschedule planning commission training.
We drafted that, then we had a conversation. We have an open seat coming up on the planning commission, and we feel like we should reschedule that after the planning commission is full.
Okay, very good.
So at some future date, Natalie will reach out and reschedule, probably in January, honestly.
Has that opening been posted on the website, or do people know to apply?
I think it'll be posted tomorrow. It's on the website today, I think social media tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Top seat to fill.
All right, item
You don't
7.
have to fill it. Skinny person can do this too.
City council report, Councilor Nichols.
Well, I think you're all aware of what happened on the Cook Lake project. I think another major one you might be interested in, I know a couple of you actually attended.
Chair Nichols, if I can just talk real quick about Cook Lake, what you guys did was outstanding, and I'd love to see as much of the trees along 101 left, if at all possible. The no signage on the road and all those things, I think that kind of goes, in my opinion, what we as planning commissioners wanted to see is not the fronts of buildings, not in-your-face kind of deal. That transition, I think, was great if they can save some of those trees in front of that house in the median kind of deal, or in the ditch, whatever we want to call it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. The other one that I wanted to touch on was the work session on the 26th, where the council heard some developer feedback on a conservation subdivision ordinance that Kendra was kind enough to draft for us and present. The feedback was very positive. If any of you have any feedback on it, I'm sure council would love to hear it. I'd love to hear it now, if you want to reach out later with any thoughts that you might have, if you did follow the discussion or you're aware of the document. We're looking to collaborate on that kind of material. I think you actually did a work session with the council on it, maybe 4 months ago. But we didn't have any feedback from people who actually have to operate under it at that time. So any additional thoughts would be welcome.
I was, of course, in attendance, as you know, and I just was dying to just, give them 20 of my own questions. And the first one I was begging to ask was, so why is this not happening in our community? Why are you not buying up 40 acres of land or 20 acres of land and developing it and then selling it to builders? Large or small. I mean, we can't control everything about it. It has to be a free market type of system. But I'm just wondering, why are the only thing we're seeing here is, well, I suppose maybe with the exception of the Bass Lake, the M&I. But, we don't, but they bought the land, they developed it themselves. They seem to be on a kind of a different deal. They're, like my neighborhood was owned by a guy, he had it platted, and he sold the lots, first come, first serve. He didn't sell them to builders. I bought my own lot, and then I found my own builder. I'm just was curious, why is that not happening here? And I'm not asking you for the answer, but that was one of the questions I really wanted to ask him is why.
I asked Brad that question once. And what I think Brad told me was, it's because of the cost of utility installation in the early stages.
The economy of scale is just, the margins are so thin. You'd think that they're making so much money, but they're not. It's hard to believe.
But I mean, even though that we have sewer and water coming in, and granted, it's only in this section or the southeast section of the city, but, well, I suppose it came through the downtown area. But, I mean, is there any anticipation that it would ever change? I mean, I don't really know.
I think when you get to smaller lots, they're infill, that's more possible. Or even, I think a big helper would be actually legislation allowing a street improvement district. That would actually raise funds. Right now, you have anyone putting 8 or more lots in the county road, they have to build $300,000 turn lanes.
Yeah, who can afford that?
Because it's first one in, because we're not allowed to have the per acre trunk charges for streets like we are for water and sewer, where someone comes in and they just pay a chunk towards the larger improvement. So I think that would be helpful, for example. But it's hard when you need so many transportation improvements and you got to pull pipe just to get where you want to be. It's tough right now in Corcoran.
In what body of our government seems to be pulling that string or requiring that? Is that a county government? Is it a state government? Is it the Met Council?
The turn lanes? Or?
Well, turn lanes and how we charge for access and.
Legislature could change that tomorrow if they wanted to. There has been the.
Yeah, you don't have a turn lane going into your neighborhood. How'd that happen?
Oh, man, I want to tell you, do you know how many times I've almost been rear-ended?
I think I got you once.
Turning into my street scares me to death sometimes, literally. Because people aren't going to stop, and they want to go right around you.
Oh, I know.
Right over and I won't get on that, but
Well, and that's
there's all kinds of problems with things like that. But I just,
And that's a local control item. The county and city dictate transportation locally, but it's that exact discussion. So if somebody comes in and builds a 12-lot subdivision, we know, from example, there should be a turn lane there. So who should pay for that? Should existing taxpayers pay for it, or should be the developer putting the 12 lots? And that adds huge cost to the developer.
yeah. Well, it was an interesting session. I enjoyed the opportunity to listen to some different perspectives and so. All right. Anything else, Counselor Nichols?
Not unless you have
Any
specific
other-
questions or topics you'd like to discuss, no?
Anybody? No. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nichols, if I may, just if you haven't looked at the council pack, there was a sketch plan also for the former, or the Roki property. It's known as the Roki property in the last packet. If you want to look at that and provide any staff comments, we continue to work with the developer on that. So just to highlight that one as well.
Oh, you're right. I forgot to
The
mention that.
Relke property, what's happening there?
It's a proposal for 3 commercial lots.
So it's all commercial?
Around Public Works, and then there's the creek in the middle, and then residential on the other side of the creek. So if you go to the council packet from August 26th, you'll see the proposal there. And I think early feedback from the planning commission would be great on that, as we talked with the developer before it comes to you.
That's pure concept. I mean, it was neat, but then it sounded like, Kendra, you got caught by surprise
Yeah, I
that
saw a new concept today.
wanted a little bit more involvement, a little bit more, and I hope it was good.
How
I
many
did.
acres was Outlot C?
It was an interesting moment.
Yeah.
It just looked like, what is,
Yeah.
it was interesting.
So we're gonna bring that to the Parks if he settles on a plan, we'll bring it to the Parks Commission on September 16th and back to council on the 23rd. Again, an informal sketch plan, and if he proceeds, of course, it will come to you for a plat review.
Well,
August 26th, there's a sketch plan, right?
Right.
It was, yeah.
And you're saying it doesn't resemble the new sketch plan?
Well, let me just say, the new sketch plan's changed a bit, so,
But is
Let me wait till
the,
the 23rd then.
okay, but is the general, I mean, it's generally commercial, right? It's a commercial district?
no, it's actually a residential site that he wants to change the northeast portion, north of the Public Works facility to northwest portion, to be commercial. So re-guiding and a rezoning. So the Rolke wraps around Public Works, and that's all rural residential today. So he'd like to do residential. What he showed the council was, as Brad said, residential east of the creek and commercial west of the creek. So I think he's looking at some other options for more lots now.
Why did I think that was all commercial? Okay.
What,
to the north it is commercial.
I was going to say, I thought that intersection area was.
It
Just north
it
of
continues the commercial area that's already to the north, farther south of
Stormins
Public
and all
Works
that,
is
yeah.
the crux of the transition.
Okay.
why was there no proposal for commercial on the southwest quadrant of that whole? Basically, the south of the city works.
Access, Hennepin County access onto County Road 19.
Well, why wouldn't they just wrap the road around Public Works?
They could. I think it's cost of building a road as long as you need to.
So I think he's continuing to evaluate a lot of things, so we don't, it's just that, with the takeaway, I think, is that the council's seen a sketch, and he's interested in developing the site, so you'll eventually see something.
Yeah.
It might not look like what you saw 2 weeks ago, but you'll see something.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right, let's move on to item 7D, other business. I just want to take a minute to recognize our comrade, Mr. Commissioner Varenkamp. Congratulations for your appointment to the city council.
Thank you.
And this will most likely be your last meeting with us, and we sure do appreciate all that you've been able to contribute this, but, you know, now you're moving from AAA ball to the big show. And while you have served us well here with your insight and whatnot, I'm sure you will do equally as well at the city council.
Thank you.
And we look forward to,
I got home and my daughter was playing Johnny Cash Ring of Fire. So it was kind of an interesting concept, but I've got the support of family members, your guys' support, and I love the time I've spent here. I originally had said I never wanted to get back into this with what I spent 20 years in a previous community and stuff, but I evidently love it a lot. So I want this place to keep being a great place to live, and everybody has to kind of get along for that to really come through. So I'll do my best. Thank you guys very much.
all right, well, thanks again. Any other business? No. Okay, moving on to 8. So I notice Commissioner Varenkamp is scheduled for October 14th. I we can fill that spot now, or we could wait for a potential new nominee.
So the schedule right now, I believe, I'm gonna talk to council about it next week, but I think we're gonna accept applications until the 20th of October. It would be after that.
20th of October, okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be glad to step in. I'm hoping to get up fishing up north so I can actually catch some walleyes. And I was shooting for middle of October, but that doesn't mean I'll leave on Thursday. So I'll pencil my name in there for now. And should it come to be that I'll be out, I'll reach out to Brad and to you folks. So, we got that covered. Anything else? Anybody else got a potential scheduling change? Why is 11/22 in red? Was there a significance to that?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because I'm going to be there.
It's not a Thursday, it's a Monday meeting.
Oh, yeah, of course, Thanksgiving, yep, okay.
I gotta just start writing that. You guys ask me that every time.
And actually,
Do we really?
We're Americans. You'd think
Wow.
It's usually my question.
And that's,
and actually, the other
Our
November
Native
date's wrong
American.
too. So November 11th actually is a holiday, so we have to move it to November 10th as a Wednesday.
Oh,
government.
that's you, Dean.
So,
So that meeting is on 11/10?
yep,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
we'll update that for the agenda too. We can't do business on a holiday.
Good call. Okay, well, if our council meeting or our liaison calendar is all squared away, I think that concludes our business, and the chair will accept a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make that motion. Lannerman?
I'll second it, Lou.
All right, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is closed. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.